Welcome to the Re-Entry Archive. Untold Regions of the Universe, an Ayahuasca experience report taken from erowid.org. This was my first time sitting in a circle drinking ayahuasca. My previous psychedelic experiences include psilocybin, LSD, Hawaiian baby woodrow seeds, DMT, salvia, and LSA. I was really hoping that my journeys into the psychedelic realms would prepare me for the experience I was about to have. When I got to the ceremony, I remember looking at the people who would be joining me and thinking that almost all of them looked entirely too familiar. I heard that from almost everyone and kept overhearing conversations like, "Where on earth have we met? Do you know so-and-so? Have we seen each other before?" It was wild. Upon the beginning of the ceremony, the shamans gave us gentle instructions about how to come up and take the drink. We were told that sometimes the medicine could be overwhelming, even terrifying, and that if we needed help, all we had to do was ask. We were also told very strongly to hold our own ground, no matter what the challenge, so as not to break the strength of the circle. We went one by one, drinking about 2 ounces worth of the brew. It tasted magical, bitter, earth-like, and yet with a very aromatic aftertaste that reminded me of myrrh. I held the drink in my mouth for a small time, and then laid down on my sleeping pad with a smile on my face that simply would not go away. When the circle had all had their drink, the lights went black. Several people lit cigarettes, and the room started to smell strongly of tobacco. Within 20 minutes, I felt the first effects of the plant. It felt very similar to the common of DMT. A whirring sound started. My body felt very heavy, weighed down, and hard to move. The visions that hit me were electric. The whirring noise grew louder. The visions grew brighter. Crazy tunnels of red, orange, green, black, and pink took over my entire consciousness. It was like I was on the inside of a wild arcade game. The girl to my right was the first to purge. The maestro, who up until this point had only been making gentle shushing noises, started to chant. Approximately at this time, the door blew open, and the room became filled with darkness. Darkness that moved, darkness that spoke, darkness that sought out bodies to take over. I found myself embroiled in an almost unholy amount of terror, as my faculties were swept out from under me. My visions would not cease in their intensity. I felt a very alien whirring presence within the visions, and became entirely confused. I kept wondering, is this ayahuasca? Is this what I signed up for? My body became incapacitated. I remember lurching for my puke bucket as the first waves of nausea hit, thinking if I didn't grab it then, I would be screwed when it finally became time to purge. My sense of reality, safety, and comfort shattered. I remember the maestro getting up and walking around the room, blowing tobacco smoke into the face of every person sitting. I was so entangled in the war of energy going on within me, I could barely make him out. I remember trying to see him, to let him know I was with him. It was that the area in front of me was being violently shaken and cracked. Light was blocked. When I couldn't make out of the maestro, he looked huge, and in full warrior regalia, with feathers and a skirt made of plants and animals. I remember even thinking he might have had a spear with him. The tobacco smoke made me violently ill. I slowly started to purge, feeling the medicine work its way through every fibre of my being, picking up garbage energy as it did and relocating it to my stomach. I got the message that this purge would not come quickly for me. The plant had to do a very thorough sweep before I could let go. As I felt myself become more and more taken by the whirring, manic, neon light display, I was starting to doubt this was Ayahuasca herself. I remember the words of one of the shamans, "Remember to hold your space." I struggled so hard with this. I was still unable to move. My head was pretty much balanced on the edge of my puke bucket for what felt like days. I kept tapping the bucket to remind myself it was still there, and rocking back and forth to the rhythms of the maestro's voice. Even though I couldn't really remember anything of reality I once existed in, I started to sweat profusely and dry heave. I wanted to purge so badly. It wasn't ready. I remember thinking, what in God's name was I thinking doing this? I'm not cut out for this. I need help. I need a kill switch. I need help. I want this to be over. How long have I been here? How much longer is this madness, this pain, this terror? I tried to muster up the energy to call out the shamans for assistance, but I lacked the capacity to speak. I reached for my water bottle several times, many times unsuccessfully. I've never felt so desperately thirsty in my life. I finally started to purge. I could see into my insides, my intestines growing purple and red, fueled by the energy of the vine, moving things up and out of me. I remembered to breathe somehow, which felt foreign and forced. I remembered my bucket and did everything I could not to lose focus of the maestro's singing. It was the only thing showing me a path out of the hell I was in. Finally, at the peak of my despair, one of the shamans came to me and grabbed my hands and asked me if I could move. Barely, I tried to laugh. I think I told him I was afraid. He helped me stand and told me to bring my bucket. I was sat in front of the maestro, who started singing to me and two others who I couldn't identify. The shaman who brought me over gave me one more hand squeeze, which made me feel instantly safer. Couldn't even believe I'd made it 10 feet across the room to sit in front of the maestro. As he sang, I felt much of my anxiety simply disappear. Every syllable he sang brought light into the darkness. It was like sun breaking through the clouds. I remember someone coming to the left of me and putting their mouth on my head and sucking something out violently. Another shaman. Finally, the singing was done, and I was led back to my sleeping pad. Before I sat down, I turned very quickly and purged into my bucket. It felt amazing. I found out later that at the beginning of the ceremony, a rival Brujo had learned of the maestro's presence in our circle and had sent an entire horde of evil energies into our room. The door blew open and all light was swallowed by these guys. Being an extremely energetic person and a novice in the spirit realm, these guys just had their way with me. I felt like I was being completely torn apart, eaten alive. Their energies were lying to me, telling me that they were ayahuasca, telling me to surrender to them. My intuition, thank God, was strong enough to keep me from doing so. The next hour was spent in raging nausea, but the darkness and violence had slowed down. I felt more grounded and confident that I could get through it. I welcomed the medicine's effect, and I started to feel the teachings of ayahuasca. Other people around me started to purge, sometimes violently, sometimes gently. Every time they did, I felt a surge of energy course through my own body. I could sometimes feel it right before it happened. I realised my psychic channels were starting to open. Small noises, moans, grunts, snores, sighs would occasionally fill the room as Maestro sang and chanted and shushed negative energy out of the room. I felt another purge coming as memories and people started to flood into my consciousness. People I loved, people I could see around me, the circle itself. I started feeling so much love, so much compassion. The purge that wanted to come was incredibly difficult to muster. I started receiving messages. One told me that I could either go through the purge, which would be violent and painful, or I could let go and move the energy downwards and let it out later that way. At this point, the female shaman, in a very coy voice, asked if anyone would like any more ayahuasca. To me, this was the most ridiculously funny thing I'd ever heard. I started laughing so hard I pitched forwards. I was simply unable to stop laughing. The rest of the room joined me in one of the silliest bursts of energy I've ever felt. It was brilliant. Later, I was just about all set to go for the purge when my good friend next to me erupted. She purged so hard that it took my own nausea away. I could feel the energy sinking down. I realised I had run out of energy to cleanse myself in that way, and I slipped into one of the most blissful states of consciousness I have ever felt in my life. I felt myself connect to everyone in the room. I also started having visions of those who were closest to me, my dear friends, and startling revelation about my family. Ayahuasca finally came through to me, loud and clear, offering me advice and information and insight about anything I asked. And that's when I realised that having a strong intention before setting the ritual was extremely important to having a clear and focused experience with the plant. My intention when I arrived at the circle was to explore the hidden parts of myself that I often ignore, my darkness and strength. I needed to overcome. They were definitely a result of that intention. Overwhelmed with the infinite amount of information she had to offer me, I heard her say, "Relax, let go, don't worry so much. There will be many more times to come back here and explore further." I started to see incredibly powerful and beautiful sights, people bedecked in star-like jewels, castles made of alabaster, high in the cosmos. I could see how the universe is an infinite fractal, and how we can choose when we die and where we go next. Often we'll follow our friends to untold regions of the universe just because we love them so much. Animal energies came to me, especially that of frogs. It had been raining all night, and the water energy was fierce and lovely within the circle. Love. Love was everywhere in this room at that point. Everyone seemed to be just done purging. There was a tangible sense of peace and love within everyone. Our female shaman started to sing. It was like listening to an angel, like a being of unconditional love and support. Her words were laced with pink and white shimmering lines of love, and melodies designed to calm us, to hold us, to make us feel grateful for the journey we'd all taken together. I remember thinking, oh God, please don't stop, please don't ever stop, please let us come with you, you wonderful, wonderful woman. Tears of rapture filled my eyes. At this point, I was laying face down on the ground, still clutching onto my bucket, and I realised I could let go of it. I was done purging. I was in bliss. Ayahuasca continued to give me more personal advice. I felt so close and so loved by her. She definitely has a sense of humour, and will simply not hesitate to throw me a challenge, but she does it knowing I can and will overcome it. When everything was said and done, I realised I hadn't yet been outside. Moving had been close to impossible, save for leaning on my puke bucket, up until now. I heard ayahuasca tell me it was time to go outside, smoke a cigarette, and either shit or get off the pot. With joy and a sense of humour, I wobbled to the door and embraced the night. I saw shadows dancing around, and for a moment felt trepidation. I was no longer in the circle. I was open prey out here, but I felt such strength return to me. I had just been through the untold annals of hell. I could handle this. Others followed me out. There seemed to be an understanding with about half the group that the ceremony was over. The next several hours were spent in joy and rapture as we shared our personal journeys while eating wholesome soup, fruit, nuts and bread. I have never felt so connected to a group of people in my entire life. These were my brothers and sisters, warriors who came in love, went through the muck, got rid of their demons, found nothing but radiance in their hearts afterwards. I kept hearing, I'm so blessed, from everyone who came out the circle. Many told him their visions and found out they had been almost identical to those of others. Several reported seeing vast numbers of friendly frogs hopping around. 5 minutes after this information was shared, someone exclaimed, "Come look, a frog." A peeper had somehow snuck into the house and was just hanging out. Another gift from ayahuasca. I have been forever changed. I have received a sacrament and a gift, and despite the pain and the terror, had I not gone through it, I would not be in the place of harmony that I am in now. I avidly look forward to my next sitting with this remarkable and powerful energy. Namaste. This was a powerful and complex trip containing several themes and the appearances of several archetypes. The traveller's intention for this trip was to explore the hidden parts of themselves, both their inner darkness and their inner strength. Their intention appears to have been clearly set, because this is exactly what they received. The darkness that descended early in the experience symbolises the shadow, a direct encounter with the unconscious and the repressed elements of the psyche. The darkness felt terrifying and oppressive as the shadow revealed to the traveller the parts of the psyche that, up until now, they had kept hidden. Amidst this encounter with the shadow, there was a moment of feeling overwhelmed. The traveller was reminded of the maestro's words, hold the space, an instruction to face whatever comes up in the experience and maintain the protective container within the circle. When approached by the maestro, the traveller sees him in native warrior regalia, carrying a spear, a representation of the warrior archetype. This archetype is a protector of the sacred and a defender of personal boundaries. Here, he showed up in defense of the self during this encounter with the shadow. Purging is a common feature of an ayahuasca experience, although this is largely caused directly by the effects of the brew. Vomiting symbolizes the purging of toxic energy and the release of trauma. A moment of making conscious and releasing unconscious matter that has been swallowed over the years. Pain, shame, guilt, disappointment. The powerful release of an emotional load through the visceral, physical act of vomiting. There was also a brief but heartening appearance of the trickster archetype towards the end of this experience, which presented itself when the traveller laughed at the offer of a second dose. This trickster energy then led the group in a moment of shared joy, highlighting the humour in this bizarre and ridiculous shared experience.